Okay, welcome to the Shelburne Development Review Board, Wednesday, May 1st, 2019. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'd like to ask for public comment. Here's your chance. We're good? All right. First order of business on the agenda here is approval of minutes. But before that, let me jump up. Conflicts of interest. Any conflicts of interest from any board members or any comments from board members?
None for me.
I'll be recusing from item 6.
Item 6 for Mark. Okay. I want to state to the board that previously I recused myself from Shelburne Green applications, and that was pertinent to a specific application. I noticed that we have Shelburne Green on the agenda today. This is a completely new application. I don't have any opinion one way or another until I see the information, so I am not going to recuse myself from this Shelburne Green application. Is there any comments from board members, concerns on that?
None.
No, none.
Any from the public?
For completely different reasons, I'm in the same spot. I previously recused myself. The reason for that recusal has been resolved, so I do not plan to recuse myself tonight.
Excellent. Very good. Okay. All right, let's move on. Next item is approval of the minutes. There's two sets of minutes. There's an April 16th site visit. Does anyone have any comments with regards to that? I looked it over. It looked okay to me.
Absent an objection by somebody else, I'll make a motion for approval.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
I have to abstain because I wasn't there.
You're an abstainer. Got it. All right. Next set of minutes is April 17th. There is a correction that I noted. It has to do with the voting, where Norm voted no.
Right. So the section at the bottom of page 2, relative to the motion that I made, has to be corrected. Norm voted against it.
Yep.
So it would be 5 ayes, 1 opposed, 2 recused.
One
Actually, you have Norm listed as a recusal,
Yeah,
so
one
it's 1
recusal.
recusal. So it's 1 opposed, 1 recusal, 5 ayes.
5-1-1.
Yep.
Is there anything else that anyone found in those minutes?
No.
All good? All right. I have a motion from someone?
Motion to approve as revised.
Second?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Moving on. Okay. First application up, application. All right, first of all, I have to open up for we did do public comments, so we're good there.
I did.
All right, application DR 19-04. Application by Matthew Winter and Asha Mueller for design review of a 24 square foot addition on a previously approved Vermont dwelling unit. Property is at 196 Shelburne Wood Drive, is located in the Village Center District, Village Design Review Overlay District, and the Stormwater District. All right, Ravi, can you give us an overview?
This is a modification of a previously approved design review application for a mobile home dwelling unit. With that application, there's a slight modification in the back where the applicant is just squaring out the back to have this 6 foot by 4 foot addition. So other than that, there's no other concern. There's nothing else to note from staff, and at this point, staff will defer to the applicant.
Okay. Emilio, are you able to get this? Great, thank you. Is anyone here to speak to this? Excellent. I'm going to swear you in, and if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Matthew Winter.
Hi, do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, under pains and penalties of perjury?
Yes.
All right. What can you tell us about?
So we were given the option by the builder, Vermont Homes, to add this small closet. As you can see on the plans, the insulated walls are going to stay where they originally are. They're going to be uninsulated walls, so this will act as more of an exterior closet. My wife and her intention is to store weed whacker, rakes, bicycles, summer tires, those sorts of things.
Great. So I do have a question, Ravi. Why do we have to review this?
All design review applications must come in front of the DRB pursuant to Article 15 of the zoning bylaws.
All right. We're all good with setbacks and everything like that?
Yep.
Okay. Any questions from the board? You're the public, so I guess you're good. All right. Anyone want to make a motion?
I move to approve.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any language, or it's just that simple?
There is specific language that I don't remember off the top of my head.
That's fine.
We will get it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, you mean the condition?
Yeah, we don't have any.
Zoning.
Oh, yeah, no, the zoning permit is
It's required.
Right.
required. Yeah, it's in the statute.
Your standard, okay.
Provided by-
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Moving on, application SUB 15-05R2. It's continued from Civil Engineering Associates on behalf of Rice Lumber for final plan amendment to relocate a residential driveway. Property is located at 4188 Shelburne Road, is located in the mixed-use district and the stormwater overlay district. All right, we'll call you back in then. Hello, Mr. Marshall.
Good evening.
Good evening. You ready to get sworn in?
I am now.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, under pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Excellent. So this is final?
This is a final plan amendment
Okay.
to relocate the existing driveway. The items that were unresolved at the previous meeting had to do with the slope of the driveway and safety concerns and access concerns from the fire department. And those are the items that still need to be resolved at this point.
Okay.
So was there a response, Ravi, by the fire department to the reply of the applicant to the chief's letter?
Not that I'm aware of, no, unless the applicant has spoken to the fire department since then.
No, we have not.
Okay.
To the letter of 422? Mm-hmm. So since that point, nobody's
Since,
talked to the chief?
so 422, and then also the response on April 23rd from the applicant. Since that point,
Oh, okay.
I have not received any response from the fire department regarding the applicant's response.
Any comments, Dave?
Perhaps just a quick review for the board. The Rice Lumber project has appeared before the board a number of times. One of the original components of the project was to, in addition to the creation of the commercial lots fronting on Route 7 and north is to the right on this particular plan, the first phase of the commercial development was the relocation of the Rice Lumber facility into lots 1 and 2. But associated with that were 4 residential lots. And the original approval, the current approval, basically calls for a 14-foot wide driveway to basically come off of this eastern portion of the retail area, or parking lot, and extend in the easterly direction. So that's
Can I
kind
interrupt
of,
for
that
just-
is,
Can
I'm
I
sorry.
interrupt for just a second and
Yes,
ask
sir.
a clarifying question? So that means that, looking at what's displayed on the screen, that an emergency vehicle would have to go up and to the left into the Rice property and then transit to the right with that orientation.
That is correct.
And what is the slope of that hill that they would go up under the old route?
That basically, okay, so I'll explain the existing conditions as they are.
Yeah, that's what I was
The,
asking you.
the existing condition as far as the constructed roadway was designed with an 8.5% grade.
Okay.
And then as you, just as you indicate, we'll get this to work, you come up to a flat area and you turn right. And then there's a steeper section here that runs between 8.5 and 10.5%.
And that was in the original approved plan?
That's in the current approval, correct?
Right, so if we turn down the plan that's before us, that steeper, narrower section would be in place per the prior approval.
That is correct.
Okay.
I don't understand. So we already approved that?
We already approved what we just described, and I wanted to tee that up because that gives us a basis to look at what the proposal is in the light of not what we might have wanted to do if we were starting from scratch, but in the light of what we already approved, because they're entitled to maintain and operate under the prior approvals should they choose to, or should we make them.
That's a good start right there, Revy. So Revy is bringing up to the screen a closer view of the existing and proposed conditions. So again, as far as what is constructed today, you could drive right up through here and all of this portion is in place. And currently, under the existing conditions, whether it be a resident or emergency response would be asked to basically make this particular turn and move back in this direction.
I'm sorry to interrupt. That's also gated, is that correct?
It is currently temporarily gated partway up the hill, right at this particular location. The approved plans call for a permanent gate at that particular location. So that represents another challenge just timing-wise, where even if a lockbox is there and the fire department can go and unlock the gate, they still have to get out of the vehicle to basically do that.
So is the gate a permanent thing or not?
The gate, right now, the gate is permanent. It's intended to basically preclude people from driving off and driving back out with materials.
So that gate, I drove over there, that gate down below is the temporary
Oh, I'm
one?
sorry. Yes, that is correct.
So that's a temporary gate?
That is correct.
But the gate, there'll be a new gate at the top?
That's correct. The current approval calls for a permanent gate at the top.
Okay.
So as
that-
time went by, we finally realized that it was probably prudent to try to separate the residential use from the commercial use as much as possible. And one of the things that ultimately came out of the brainstorming over time was, rather than having people drive up through the commercial area, was perhaps to create a dedicated driveway that separated you from the secured area of the property and to come up through here. So we knew, that the fire department has become more aggressive as far as their requests of the board in regards, and applicants, as far as how to basically ensure that there's safe access in and out of the property under those particular response conditions. And as such, we proposed standards that met, or at least were, where we were changing things, fully met what we call the NFPA 1 design guidelines. NFPA is the acronym for the National Fire Protection Association. And NFPA 1, they have many, many, many manuals, but NFPA number 1 is the one that happens to address site access recommendations in regards to width and other means of fire response, hard surfaces that can basically balance the needs of the fire department against those particular goals of the community, whether they be stormwater management or other things. As we pave more things, we also create more stormwater runoff. So what we're trying to do is deal with a couple of different policies. One is public health, welfare, and safety. And obviously those are my canon of ethics as a civil engineer also, which is public safety. And the things that we need to balance on the other side is public welfare and public health. So what we did is we basically took the NFPA 1 written standards. Unfortunately, Shelburne doesn't have any written standards. Other communities like Charlotte do, Colchester do, South Burlington. Unfortunately, we don't have that here in Shelburne. It would be nice if we did. Then we wouldn't have this particular go-around. But that being the background, we took the NFPA 1 manual, which is, it's not a small thing. But nonetheless, it's one that becomes the Bible. So whenever we're dealing with Burlington or South Burlington, they say, Dave, what's the Bible say? So
I will point out that is adopted by the state of Vermont, so that is, the rules, the law,
well,
whatever.
I think that's a valuable point.
Even though Shelburne doesn't have any policies, that's adopted by the state of Vermont, so we follow those guidelines.
We get that in through the state.
Yep.
Good point. So that being the background, where we were proposing to change things, we went to the 20-foot minimum road standard. In addition, we also adopted some of the ideas that the town of Charlotte puts into place for residential driveways and intersections, where they look for widened areas that service not only as a pull-off area. So if you see somebody coming down a narrow road, you have the opportunity to pull off to the side, but also it acts as a operations area, where basically you have extra space to park vehicles and to basically deal with, getting into the house site from the common driveway. So we came at this in good faith, thought we did anyways, in regards to the modifications to what obviously had been previously approved, thinking that it was going to be better than not doing anything at all. And we got a request that if I'm the fire department, I would love to have extremely wide roadways and the like for dealing with the emergencies that they have to deal with. So that's very real. But at the same time, we also need to balance what is the likelihood of them needing these particular services. As we deal with public roads, we make sure that they're wide enough to basically deal with the frequency in which they'll be utilizing those. If you had an apartment building with 40 people living there, you need to basically make sure, because the frequency of their particular responses to that particular apartment building are likely going to be larger than a single family home, you make those particular access ways wider to basically facilitate not only their needs, but also the conflict that occurs as part of them responding to an emergency. So the challenge that we have here is, what is the likelihood of, the conflict that occurs in this particular area? Things that, as far as fire emergencies and carbon monoxide emergencies, the fire department's website says that they average about 37 a year. Now, there's just under 3,000 properties in Shelburne. So what is the likelihood of them coming to your house once a year? It's about 1 in 75. When you multiply that by 365 days a year, on a particular day, there's probably 1 in 29,000 chance of them meeting you on the roadway. Obviously, when you have 3 or 4 homes, those odds change. But what we're trying to do is recognize that the likelihood of something happening, and basically making sure that there's the ability for a space, there's somebody to pull off and let the fire department go by or the ambulance go by, is there. So that's where we were coming from when we put this particular modified plan together, and felt very comfortable with it. And not to say that our office hasn't heard from the fire department in the past, but at the same time, there's also been some very perfect world scenarios that they've made requests for. And we felt that this was an appropriate balance as far as those particular aspects.
Comparing this to the prior approved plan, though, am I correct in understanding that this proposal, in fact, has a wider path of access than the prior one with respect to the short, hilly section?
So this section
Right.
definitely meets that particular statement. After we get to the first driveway, you can see that the road goes from 20 feet back down to the 14 feet. But after that particular point, we also introduced this kind of, I'll call it the bulb concept at each one of the driveway locations that basically provides that. In Charlotte, they call it the operations area. For Dave Marshall, we call it the pull-off area for all those times that you aren't, you don't have an emergency response there.
So in addition to this, the steep area that is wider, is the grade of the steepest section of the new proposal the same, steeper, shallower than the grade in the previously approved?
So the steepest section of this particular portion of the revised driveway location is slightly flatter, less steep. It's not significantly less. I mean, we talked about 10.5% for the existing condition here, and we've been able to get that down to about 9.6%, I believe. Every little bit helps. But at the same time, when it comes to public standards, the Public Works specifications, which in theory, again, I mentioned last time, are for public improvements, they do provide guidelines for short sections that can be up to 10% slope for a public road. in regards to all the issues that are related to traversing a road, whether it be Public Works trying to maintain it or whether it be the fire department trying to respond to an
That's up to
event.
300 feet, right?
That's correct.
And you're under the 300-foot,
Yeah, it's about 230 feet.
right.
Yes.
I have a question on that. Do you have any concept of what the driveway slopes are gonna be, the grades?
No. I can say that once you get from this particular area up into what I call the upper plateau, they seem to be more in the 5% range as you come off of the common driveway and then head up in. Of course, every particular site's going to be a little bit different. And the fire department also reserved its right to come back and say, hey, Dave, you can't do something that's 12% for a short section. It doesn't make sense.
All right.
Now, who's responsible to maintain the roads, like during the winter?
That would be the property owners.
Property owner.
Yes,
So these are a private road, this is a private road,
that is correct.
which is why technically one could make the argument that the public works standards don't apply.
That's correct. We are subject to subdivision rules, and Revy pulled out what he could as far as guidance on that particular aspect of the rules. It is kind of vague. It basically says meet appropriate circulation standards, and in this particular case, based on what we have or what most fire departments will use as a starting point for guidance, we felt comfortable that we had, the proposed improvements or proposed revisions improved upon, let alone the remaining area. Not perfect as far as the 14-foot number, and that would be ideally 20 feet. But at the same time, if you could imagine a long driveway, and would you want to build something extra long for something that's going to happen once every 80 years? Well, no, but let's at least provide appropriate pull-off locations to basically allow people to pass each other.
Is there an issue with 14-foot wide road to get the fire truck in?
No.
I mean,
That-
we're talking about traffic
Yep.
issues.
Town of Charlotte does it. Charlotte, not the town of Charlotte. Charlotte Volunteer Fire Department. Their written standards call for a 14-foot wide driveway.
Yeah.
I won't get into the details of why it's 14 feet, not 12, but 14 feet is their written standard.
Robbie, do we have precedent on the fire department's input into our decisions?
So in regards to this approval,
Or an approval like this?
an approval like this, yes and no. So there is precedent in terms of this project that this was approved with 14-foot wide driveways and the consideration that the roadway serving the four residential parcels in the back is a driveway. That was a definition that was set by the DRB, that this is going to be a driveway and therefore not subject to a type 2 road spec. And the DRB has said in the past that in terms of driveway width, we can make a determination on whether this is a driveway or whether this is a type 2 road or a type 1 road. And so there is some precedent on that for the DRB to make that determination. In terms of, I guess, the slope, the rules set forth in the Public Works specs is what staff adheres to, which is as stated in the staff report. Street grades shall not exceed 8% unless approval is granted by the Planning Commission, which is you in this case, because this was drafted back in 2008 after consultation with the Public Works Director. To exceed 8%. In no case they exceed 10%. In no case shall a grade between 8 and 10% be longer than 300 feet. And so that is what is the binding aspect of this. And this relates back to section 1900.3B, that all roads, regardless of whether they are to be private or taken over by the town, shall be constructed to meet the structural specification of section 3 of the Shelburne Public Works specifications. One thing to keep in mind is that regardless of if this road is public or private right now, the potential and the possibility of this road being taken over by the town in 20, 40 years is possible. And I am aware that the town is looking into private roads that they might need to take over at some point in time and wondering, can we take this over? Is this up to our specifications or not? And so the town does strive to recommend that developers, even if they are private roads, build up to public works specifications, so that way if that day comes, if that day comes, that it can be assumed by the town without as much of a liability as a 14-foot road would be.
So Robbie, do I correctly understand what you're saying is that the DRB in a prior proceeding on this property decided to treat the extended passageway to the houses as a private drive instead of a Class 2 road?
Yes.
So we have not only a precedent, we have a binding decision at this point saying that it can be only 14 feet, unless we modify that.
Unless you modify it as this is a site plan amendment approval.
And did you say it was 2008?
So the public works specifications?
Oh, the public, I thought you meant
No,
that
the approval
road was
is.
done to I understand.
Yeah.
No, so at the end of the road, how do you turn around? Because it's,
So we have, thank you, Ravi. It'll be much easier to explain.
That's how you turn around at the end.
So this is the
That just wasn't up earlier.
third
Yeah.
and fourth lots at the very north end of the common drive. And this is the bulb out, I'll call it, that basically facilitates somebody parked on the side of the road, but at the same time, when the activity is over with, they basically can back up and come back out the
Got
other
it.
direction.
thank you.
Any more questions from the board?
Just one small one. Where do we get our decision-making process on whether the fire department's requests are more than just a we would like, something they really have to have? Do we have any input? I mean, I'm confused about how this goes.
Yeah, so I thought about that too. In my mind, the town has a specification on grades.
Right.
And if the fire department felt that adamant that that was inappropriate, they should go back after change that rule.
Okay, that's where I was going.
That's my
That's
thought,
not
that's what
our
I'm
job.
thinking, that's right.
That's
Yeah.
that's zoning and planning, not our job.
Right, and if the fire department feels that that is an inappropriate rule, then they need to go back and get that addressed for public safety matters.
Okay.
And I'm not downplaying that by any means.
Okay,
but
no, I
that's
just,
what we
I,
have. Yeah, no, Dave?
I would like to think Revy can confirm this, but I don't expect him to do it on the fly. But when we shared the information back to staff, we sent it directly to Chief Wimet. We specifically said that, if we can't work out something before the hearing, that we ask that you have a representative here so that we can have that direct communication as part of the process. So that's why I was hoping when I came in that there would be lots of people here, and one of them would be from the fire department. But
Okay. I do have a question. So the road and driveway as it's being proposed meets the Vermont standards in that big thick book?
yes.
Okay.
I have one other comment. There was a discussion about the name of the road,
Yes.
and somebody other than me should probably weigh in here, but to delineate it by saying one's a road and one's a lane, I don't know how we feel about that,
I
but
agree with you. I don't think it
I agree with you too.
is a good distinction. I mean, if you're
I
gonna
think,
change the road,
yeah,
change it to
we
something like
wrestle with
really
every
different.
community as far as trying to pick road names that don't conflict with each other. And in an emergency, these are going to sound awful
Yeah.
alike. So we concur that a different name that we should work out with the 911 coordinator in town here would be the appropriate way to basically solve that particular issue.
Yeah. I mean, I think he raised a great point, but I think the recommended solution, I think we could do better on.
So there's roads, there's lanes, and there's drives.
And if you're driving like really fast, which one was it,
well, and if
It's a
they're trying to-
causeway.
Yeah.
Trying to GPS it, it
All right.
depends where they're going.
So just to be editorial, to move the conversation along, in case somebody disagrees or wants to comment on this, the two arguments in favor of this proposal are, secondly, it appears to meet the current town standards to the extent that they're documented. Even the steep section, which exceeds 8%, is less than 300 feet long and less than 10%. So it conforms to the current town specifications. But I think the first reason that I'm attracted to this is to make the old joke, consider the alternative. There is an approval on file. The property owner has every legal right to simply build it to the standards of that approval. The road is steeper, the road is narrower, and it isn't as safe as this one. So for me, it appears to be compliant, but it's also a better deal, I think, for the town from a safety perspective, among others, as well as for the security of the lumberyard. So to me, this seems like kind of a no-brainer. I am a little disappointed, though, that the fire department didn't respond, although they only had 48 hours to do it. That's a tight timetable.
Okay, someone want to make a motion? Oh, I'm sorry, let me close first out. Any other comments from the board? Any comments from the public? All right, would someone like to make a motion?
Do you have draft language on this, Robbie?
Yep. First page, right in the back, page 2.
Got it. So, I'll make a motion to finalize the record and close the hearing for SUB 15-05R2, and make a motion to approve by directing the staff to prepare a decision consistent with the text that appears on the page 2 of the staff memorandum report.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you for your
All right.
time.
Very good. Could someone get Mr. Salmon?
The Shelburne Green? There's Lori. Item number,
We're skipping the next one.
item 7 is, we're not doing, right?
We're not doing.
Yeah, we'll announce a continuance on that. All right. So I see on our agenda, we have application SUB 19-03, but I've seen the correspondence also that indicates they would like to have more time to work through their discussions.
That's correct.
All right, did they indicate when they want to continue?
No.
All right, so we have a continued to an indefinite date. Do we just,
You have to,
assign a date
you have to
them?
assign a date.
All right, so let's give them enough time to do it.
So dates include May 15th, June 5th, June 19th.
We shoot for June 5th.
I kind of like that too.
All right, I move we continue the application SUB 19-03 to the May 15th meeting.
Second.
Wait. June 5th meeting.
I mean, June 5th. Wait a minute, don't get confused. June 5th, I modify my
All right,
motion.
June 5th. Do we have a second on June 5th? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. On June 5th. Very good. Okay. Make sure I get this right. Moving on. Next is application SUB 13-02R4. Application by Civil Engineering Associates on behalf of Shelburne Green LLC for preliminary plan review of a proposed two-lot subdivision. Property is located at 120 Graham Way in Sage Court. Is located in the Commerce and Industry South District and Stormwater Overlay District. All right, Ravi, would you like to kick us off?
Sure.
Thank you.
So this subdivision request would effectively create a 6.3 acre lot known as proposed lot 1 and a 14.4 acre lot referred to as lot 2. The applicant is not proposing any changes to the existing or proposed uses and structures at the moment as a part of this application. During the sketch plan review phase, the DRB did conclude that the that an alternative side yard setback of 0 feet to the boundary between the proposed lots 1 and 2 is warranted as the project is consistent with the town comprehensive plan. So there is alternative setback standards already set in place, but that can be reviewed again by the DRB if they choose and if they have findings that warrant this. In terms of site plan review as a part of this application, the DRB may require Granway and Sage Court to be paved with asphalt or improved to meet the town public works specifications if the board finds evidence warranting these improvements. One suggestion staff does have is that the applicant provide legal documentation that allows for shared parking use among proposed lots 1 and 2, as this is one entire PUD, Shelburne Green. Let's see here. I think, other than that, staff defers to the applicant.
Okay. Marshall.
Very good. Dave Marshall from Civil Engineering Associates. In this particular case, when we appeared before you for the sketch plan review, this plan basically shows the 20-plus acre parcel. North is to the right, and that's Shelburne Road, Route 7, right along this particular Shelburne Vineyard across the street. And the portion of the Teddy Bear parcel here and their main entrance off of the viewing corridor here. Historically, the manufacturing facility that was converted into a combination of both continued light industrial manufacturing as well as office use is the pre-existing buildings that date back probably a good 30 or 40 years now that basically were the first redevelopment effort of the applicant. And subsequent to that particular effort, there was what we call Shelburne Green South. It's been the subject of a number of different applications and hearings before the board. And these represent the existing structures, that occupy what we call Shelburne Green South. To take a step back, Shelburne Green North had an existing parking lot out front, and a new parking lot was constructed on the south side of the buildings. And under current conditions, there is an excess number of parking spaces that are beyond what is necessary according to the zoning regulations for the land uses within the buildings. But Revy's point is very good in the fact that this particular paper subdivision, again, no proposed construction improvements, at least with this application, creates a division of the planned unit development. And we want to basically make sure that when this line is drawn, that both halves of the Shelburne Green project can operate viably. So that basically means with this particular constructed entrance, this is where they widened Route 7 for a dedicated left-hand turn lane, that the people in Shelburne Green North have the ability to basically go through the property of Shelburne Green South to get there, and vice versa with regard to use of the stormwater management facility, as well as some of the other sewer facilities that perhaps in this particular case begin within Shelburne Green South and move in the northerly direction across the Shelburne Green North property. So those particular easements have been depicted on the preliminary plat plan submitted to the board, and at this point are open to further discussions in regards to ideas on how to make it better.
So Ravi, what was the rationale for a 0 setback? Since it seems like that was already decided.
This was reviewed at the sketch plan review phase that, according to the town comprehensive plan, this project can warrant 0 lot lines as long as it is something, a project that is creative, that is what's the right words to use right here? That is very much in line with something that is approachable, that is form-based, approachable, pedestrian-friendly, and unique in terms of design. To sum it up, based on that rationale, that the DRB came to the conclusion that this project, because of its design, warrants 0 lot lines.
But there's no design.
So the entire project scope is not seen at the moment. This is something that I'm sure the applicant can extrapolate upon, of course, but in prior applications, the entire plan for Shelburne Green South includes up to eight. It's currently eight. Okay, eight buildings in a C-shaped design. And so based on that design that has already been approved back in 2014 and amended and approved over the last 5 years, that unique design should be, I guess, kept in place with this approval.
So the bottom line is that Revy's correct in the fact that these two buildings, well, let me answer the first question, is why aren't all the buildings shown on here? Well, our surveyors, based on their particular standards, are only required or asked to identify what is physically on the ground. So that's what this particular plat plan represents,
Right.
is the existing conditions if you were to walk out there today, or drive out there for that matter. So, but with regard to what Revy was describing, if you can imagine this as being the middle of a U as I come back around, this was the original concept for basically having a ring of buildings with a central green. And with that, there was, where was I going with all that particular discussion? Basically a specific interaction between what was happening in Shelburne Green South and Shelburne Green North. There's still some communication as far as pedestrian paths that go between the two. But as far as any further somebody taking advantage of the 0-foot setback and doing something silly, there's already a specific building envelope in this particular area where buildings can and can't go. So we're not trying to change that, but when it comes to secondary features like parking lots and their separation distance from property lines, those already exist right here. So we're not proposing any changes to the parking lot or to the building in the areas where, come on, this particular proposed line has been drawn. It's more administrative to reflect that we're basically trying to divide the older Shelburne Green North from the new Shelburne Green South from a land ownership standpoint.
Okay.
And that is in order to basically provide a paper line between the two, with the understanding that there's still going to be interaction between the two. That was going to be the cleanest way to basically proceed moving forward.
Got it.
So no matter what the changes are, they'll still have that access,
That's correct.
no matter what.
Yep. Any physical changes still require to come back before the board for review and, if appropriate, approval. So you still have the ability to basically, again, talk about every single change and how appropriate they are. But I really don't see the 0-foot number being an issue only because of the previous development, previous build-out characteristics.
Yeah. Based on the zero number would possibly only affect, I believe, building 5 in the
future.
Current approval for Shelburne Green. And with that, if that would have to be modified, it would be a 15-foot setback. But otherwise, everything else is would be considered legally non-conforming if this plan were approved because it was in conformance at a previous point in time.
From staff's recommendations, there's no violation with the 0-foot setback.
Staff finds it to be in conformance with the comprehensive plan currently in effect.
Thank you. All right. Any questions from the board?
And either of you can answer this. Do you have in mind a specified form or format for the agreement to provide for shared parking? Or is the concept that if the DRB requires such an agreement, that we don't need to get into the weeds of granularly how it's set up?
So I think what I'm hearing is there a form or is there a form or at least a format in which
Have
shared
either of
parking-
you got a format in mind, or can the DRB, without getting into the nitty-gritty of that, simply say there has to be an appropriate agreement providing for parking privileges both ways.
What we typically find is that if an applicant, let's presume Shelburne Green South, needs more parking, it's got to come from somewhere, and that's typically what we call an off-lot or off-property agreement, where somebody can use somebody else's property for X number of parking spaces for their own use to become zoning compliant. That's usually a document that the attorneys are very happy to draw up. And that's usually what we rely upon as far as their expertise on basically getting the T's crossed and the I's dotted in order to basically make sure that it's a solid document. It's not one that's very common for Shelburne or for many of the communities south of Burlington. But once you get into the more dense areas, then you will see some of that shared parking concept. But I'm happy to report back as part of a future application anything that we could share to staff as far as at least experience or forms or documents that basically support those particular types of efforts. But at this particular case, my understanding from the applicant is that the existing Shelburne Green North has more parking spaces than they need, which begs the question of, is Shelburne Green South going to utilize any of those? Their plan is that they don't want to have to do that, only because of the distance that some people might have to walk. Bottom line is people are still used to parking their car and walking 50 feet into a building. So that being the background, they're trying to design Shelburne Green South every time it comes back before you or staff with certain land uses, is to make sure that the supporting parking is there as part of the Shelburne Green South project, so-called.
Any comments on that, Robbie?
Pretty much what the applicant said is true, that under section 1960, parking is for on-site parking, that by creating a lot division, in this case, would create off-site parking needs. And so some sort of legal document would need to be in our files that would show that there is some sort of lease, at least 5 years in length, or perpetual lease, that off-site parking is allowed for both customers and employees of Shelburne Green South and also Shelburne Green North. With this, staff is sure that the applicant would like the users of Shelburne Green South to use the parking in Shelburne Green South, but staff does foresee shared use of parking in this entire PUD.
And that's also part of just planned unit development, hence the name, is how do you plan for an appropriately operational facility? And in some particular cases, just because of the location of parking spaces, they happen to be across the lot. So it's something that we will potentially, whether this project or somebody else's project, have coming before you. But at this point in time, that's not the intent as far as Shelburne Green South and North having to have a cross agreement there.
Just to clarify in my head what we're approving if we're denying, we're just talking about a preliminary, they'll come back with a final. Do we get to ask all these questions again?
Yes.
Okay?
Yes. Yep.
Yep. So, I mean, basically, it's a straight subdivision except for staff, and we thought it was actually a good idea. We hadn't thought about it, was, providing that particular 0-foot setback. We just thought that was going to basically provide the cleanest way for the project to move forward.
Okay. Any more questions from the board before I open up to the public? We'll come back to the board. All right, open public comments, questions of this application. Okay, don't see any. All right, staff has constructed some language. Are we at a point now where someone would like to make a motion?
I would make a motion to finalize the record and close the hearing for SUB 1302R4. And I would make a motion to authorize the applicant CEA on behalf of Shelburne Green to file a final plan application for this SUB 1302R4 with the following recommendations as written. There's 2 items here: legal documentation on the shared use parking, and If you're proposing any new lots, the applicant will need to refile sketch plan application.
Hang on a second. Dave specifically said the applicant doesn't want to do shared parking.
We're not proposing, that's right, we're not proposing
All
any.
right, so we
If
have
you're
that,
not proposing, and we have this
we have
language in here.
for it.
The staff's recommendation.
Yeah.
is
Staff's
that- is
recommendation,
that the
so-
subdivision be based on it.
So you're not proposing to do shared parking?
That's my understanding from the applicant, correct. However, I mean, there are other shared infrastructure that is very appropriate to provide those legal documents to you to demonstrate how it's going to work. So whether you want to expand that particular condition to say all supporting infrastructure and potentially any shared parking that may be proposed, we're happy to do that. That's fine.
I guess, yeah, that's where I got confused, because
Yep.
I,
But I think
Reed
there's a
was-
way to recover. Yes.
thank you.
state your last sentence again.
I can't remember it.
I can't either.
Rewind the tape.
Great recovery.
Are you okay with requiring shared parking?
Yeah, I did say that.
That's what I was asking.
I'm saying that we're happy to provide a form that shows how you would share how an agreement would outline shared parking.
All right.
And the infrastructure required for the,
More importantly, I'm very interested in that, as far as demonstrating how the easements and all supporting
that's good as
documents
written
as far as access in and out of the property will be supported
Since
with
this-
agreements between the
So
parties.
since this is preliminary, we'll leave it up to the applicant to
bring it in.
submit a document next time around.
Right.
So that means item 1 is staying in or going out? in your
Item 1 is
proposal?
staying,
Item 1 would stay, and I'll amend it make a friendly amendment by saying the shared use of parking areas and related infrastructure to the PUDC. That fair?
That's fair.
Agree with that, Dave?
Yes,
Okay,
that's
Cool.
acceptable.
Very good.
okay. And with the second condition as written in the staff report.
second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Very
Good. Thank you for your time.
Hey, Dick. Okay, next up is application CU 19-06, application by Maureen Mindell, Ann Mindell, and Sean Tui for conditional use review to build an accessory apartment. Property is located at 164 Pearson Drive, is located in the residential district and stormwater overlay district. And I apologize if I mispronounced the last name. Sorry. Ravi, can you give us a quick overview? Oh, well, let me go Ravi first, and we'll swear him in.
Okay. Yeah, this is a request for an accessory apartment. And because it is it's in a new structure, it requires conditional use review and approval by the DRB. Otherwise, staff does not note any concerns with this proposal, and at this point, we'll defer to the applicant.
Very good. All right, we'll swear you in.
Sure. My name is Sean Tui. I'm one of the applicants. I'm here with my wife, Ann Mindell, and my mother-in-law, Maureen Mindell. But I'm going to be doing the talking, I believe. Yes,
All right, do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, under pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Very good. All right. What can you add?
Well, I'm just going to step back in time a little bit and give some context to this application. This property, 164 Pearson Drive, has been in the Mindell family one way or another since 1968, when Maureen and her late husband Howard purchased the property. My wife Ann grew up in the property, and Maureen lived there full-time until 2010. At which time we moved in and we ultimately purchased the property from her in 2012. Maureen now lives in a condo in Shelburne and has decided that it's too big of a spot for her and that she'd like somewhere else. And the ideal place to live would be at 164 Pearson Drive, but not quite in the same house with us. And so we explored different options and looked into a company called Vermont. I think you guys saw a Vermont building in an earlier application. Vermont is a company, the Vermont-based company that does modular design of highly energy efficient homes. They use heat pumps, and They are built off-site and delivered to the location, so there's a pretty minimal impact in terms of the disruption at the site. I can go into more detail about the Vermod specifications if you're interested. One of the nice things is that there's not a foundation, it's placed on pillars, so it is a structure that can be removed if that is ultimately a decision somewhere down the line. One of the other nice things about it is that it's specifically designed to be a building where the person who's living there can age in place, so it's constructed so that it can accommodate walkers or wheelchairs or anything else. So the plan is that Maureen will be living here instead of in some type of residential facility with us. So in terms of the zoning regulations, I think Ravi covered it. As I understand it, we would otherwise comply with all of the setbacks and the frontage and lot size requirements for an accessory building. The reason why we need to go through this process is because it is a new building. But we feel like given the lot size and the dimensions, the house is actually set pretty far back off the road. There's a long driveway. Some of the pictures, I believe, show that. So it's there's a minimal amount of impact on the neighboring properties. And I think everyone knows Maureen well. She knows that she'll be out there gardening and sprucing up the yard as she has for the past 50 years. So if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I think that covers it.
So it fits within all the setbacks, that's not an issue. Infrastructure, water, electricity, how does that all get plumbed in?
I'm assuming you're asking Ravi this question. Okay.
So just wanted to pull this up to show that it might be a little bit hard to see, but the purple footprint is the proposed accessory apartment, which will be 30 feet from the edge of the right-of-way and 50 feet from the side boundary line, and far from the rear boundary line. In terms of water and wastewater connections, my understanding is that a water and wastewater connection will be through Pearson Drive. I believe that that's where the water line runs. Extra allocation, anything like that, would be reviewed by the water and wastewater departments respectively.
Okay. So you're saying it'll have a direct hookup right to the street?
It would either have a direct hookup to the street or through the house.
Right, and the location where the building is actually where the water and the sewer line comes in, as well as the electrical and broadband, so there shouldn't be too much disruption to access that.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Yes, ma'am. Could you, you'll have to introduce yourself and get sworn in.
My name's Faith Rushford, and I live across the street.
All right. Can you grab a microphone?
Thanks. And
Hang on. You ready? Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, under pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm having a difficult time seeing where the structure would be. Can you? Okay.
It's a dark line.
Yeah, it's really dark.
And that's the footprint?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you see it?
Yeah. What are the dimensions?
I don't have the exact dimensions. I know they're on the plan,
So the dimensions as listed on the plans appear to be 40. Yep.
Sorry?
42 by 23.
42 by 23. Okay.
And the 23 is the street side?
Yes.
So I drove by, you have a lovely lot there. I'm assuming it's hard, it is, to your point, it's hard to see where it is. Is the intent that it'll come off the house the way it is? Like that square? I mean, that, it's just, what the question is, where is it on the lot?
Can you see the hash marks?
Yeah.
Right. I think the exact location is hard to say. And I think Ravi estimated where it would be based on what we said. I think
Okay.
once we actually there's a yard there and there's some gardens there, and whether it's how far the building is away from the house or not, I think is still where we need to work out some of the details. But I guess the point is that there's a fairly significant distance between the end of the property or the road and where the building will be.
Okay.
But presumably
You gotta pass the mic back and forth or we're not gonna hear that.
this is just news, and I live across the street, and I'm just wondering what's going to be across my street. I've come as a friendly neighbor, but curious, and we know Maureen, and it'd be lovely to have you back in the neighborhood. So that's just trying to get a sense of what the view's going to be across the street. Is there going to be any plantings to kind of, I mean, that building looks very different stylistically from the house that's there. Visually wondering.
So I think we tried to make an effort to make it compatible with the house. Certainly, we don't want to have something that's completely foreign looking to the house that's there either. I think the majority of the trees, which there's a significant number of large trees in that area, are going to remain. I think when we talked about because they deliver the building and they have to use a crane to put it down, there was one limb that's sort of hanging over where we discussed that would have to be removed. But other than that, I don't think there's any plan to change so there's going to be trees that are still between the road and the building. And then there's some other trees there that won't be touched at all, certainly. So I'm not sure if that completely answers your questions, but I anticipate there will probably be other trees planted, but I don't think we've gotten that far. I think you mentioned, or at least it was in the packet, the plan is to include another parking space because there's no parking space near, and so that has actually led us to conclude that the building needs to be close. You can see there's a parking space that the end of on the right side of the building is a 2-car garage, and what we would anticipate is somewhere going in there would be another parking spot. So to not have the building be a far distance from that, and to make it be connected so that we don't have to change anything else in that. There's not going to be, I guess what I'm saying also is there's not a new driveway coming into the lot from the road or anything like that. It would still be accessed by this single driveway that's there.
We have another mic now.
So I know that this was listed as a conditional use item, and I don't know, I've never been to one of these meetings. Is that the sort of stipulating the usage for this structure, or?
Ron, what's the definition of conditional use?
So a conditional use would be, in this case, for not only the structure, but also the use. That the use primarily warrants additional review by the board and the public in order to determine impacts by the use that would potentially happen on this property. It's, to my understanding, it seems as though the Planning Commission and staff at one point in time determined that that an accessory apartment that is new and also 2 bedrooms and greater than greater than, let's see, yeah, increase in the dimension of the parking area, greater than 2 bedrooms located in structures that are new, that these are require conditional use review, requiring analysis of impacts on town services, analysis of historic structures, impacts on the village, traffic, and everything else that's listed under 1910 and 1910.4 and 1910.4B. So it's based on the use, but in this case, the use and the structure.
Okay. I just was, I don't know how to do this sensitively, but should Maureen leave the property? I'm just wondering, could this ever become like a rental or like an Airbnb, or is this not the right meeting to ask the question?
There's accessory use structures. One of the structures has to be occupied by owner. The other one could be rented out.
So an accessory apartment exists if and only if either the apartment or the house is occupied by the owner. So say hypothetically 10, 20, 30 years down the road, there's a new owner. That owner could live in either the apartment or the house and rent out either or as an Airbnb, short-term or long-term, depending on what ordinances are in effect at that point in time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the public? Yes, sir.
Could I just respond?
You may.
That, okay. So, because I understand the concern, and it's certainly, our goal is only to provide housing for Maureen, and part of the reason why this appeal, as I said, is that this is a structure that can be removed from the property, and so in terms of what we would use it for, the purpose is to provide it for her. My understanding, I understand the regulations to speak about what's required of when you add a 2-bedroom. This is, just to be clear, this is a 1-bedroom dwelling, but because it's new, that's why we're here. In fact, I believe that if we wanted to put a 1-bedroom dwelling that was part of the existing building, that's a permitted use, and we would be able to do it without coming here. We just feel that this is a better solution for us, and it makes more sense for a number of reasons. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Anyone like to make a motion? I'll do it. I'd like to make a motion to finalize the record and close the hearing, and make a motion to approve and direct staff to prepare a decision indicating approval of conditional use review as language stated. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, thank you. Okay, application SUB 12-07R4 is next. Application by Trudeau Consulting Engineers on behalf of the Automaster LLC for final plan review to expand an existing conditional use in a commercial planned unit development. Property is located at 3328 Shelburne Road, is located in the Mixed Use District, Stormwater Overlay District, and the Floodplain and Watercourse District. All right. Ravi, get us started.
Yeah, in response to the preliminary plan hearing for this item, the applicant has come back with figures for accessible parking and bicycle parking, and included 12 bicycle parking spaces and 6 accessible parking spaces on the site plans, which is in compliance with 1960.3 and 1960.4. Otherwise, staff has no other concerns at this point regarding this application, and will defer to the applicant.
Applicant, would you like to state anything?
Sure.
All right, you have to put your name on the record, and then I will swear you in.
Andrea Dotolo, Trudell Consulting Engineers.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, under pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Excellent.
Yeah, all that I would add, it is still the same proposal. It's a gravel parking lot expansion, just over half an acre, about 24,000 square feet. There has been no changes to the overall plan or landscaping. We did update our parking count numbers and clearly depict the 6 existing handicap spaces. We did also realize that the site does not have a bicycle rack out there and have proposed a bicycle rack at this time. It's a 12-space rack, which is based off a required 115 parking spaces. 10% of that gets
Hang on a
us
second.
12.
So the parking spaces are, whether it's to park cars to be sold or park cars that are customers coming in, the number, that's irrelevant to the number?
It's, from my understanding of this application, staff at the point of sketch plan made a determination that the expansion of the gravel parking area is an expansion of the conditional use. That the 24,000 is a 24,000 square foot expansion of the vehicle sales and repair use that would trigger this process for the applicant. And so, going back to your question about the parking, there is a differentiation from my understanding of vehicle storage, which is part of the vehicle sales and use that is very much integral to this application and the application process, and also the parking that's linked to the uses. And so, from my understanding, the count for the parking was at 112, I want to say, for the uses, and therefore, under section 1960.4, it's 10% of the total amount of parking for the use must be the same amount for the bicycle parking. So, if I remember correctly, around 112, then 11 bicycle parking spaces, and therefore the applicant is provided for 12 in their site plans.
Okay, so 112 spaces for customers coming and going, not for car inventory. Is
From staff's understanding, yes.
that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to be extra clear, there are more spaces out there, more standard parking spaces, your 9-foot by 20-foot parking space that you would need to have. However, it was determined by the staff that the required number is 112.
It's gonna be a busy bike rack.
Yeah, I hope people bike there and buy a BMW.
I'm sorry. Wait for you. All right, we digress. Any other comments?
Adding to that comment, the client would be interested in having less bicycle parking spaces. I don't believe that that's an option per the bylaw.
Is that anything we can waive?
No, not under 1960.4. There's no
Sorry.
waiver
That's
or
okay.
reduction.
All right. Someone like to make a all right, anything, other comments? Any questions, comments from the board? All right. All right.
Make a motion to finalize the record, close the hearing, and to indicate approval. Directing the staff to prepare a decision that indicates approval of the final plan review application, SUB 12-07R4, by Trail Consulting and Engineers on behalf of Automaster LLC to amend a previously approved PUDC by expanding the existing conditional use by 24,978 square feet with the following conditions. And those conditions are the 6 listed in the staff draft language. There is no need, I think, for the 7th placeholder. So that would be the motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I will remember to ride my bike over when I want to look at a car.
Beamer bikes.
All right. Okay, time for any other business or correspondence from any members of the board. Public is done. All right, they're gone. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right.